Well, it being Wednesday, that means we're going to catch up on the developments in the Russia probe, and there is a decent amount to talk about. There is a huge amount of speculation as we speak about when the probe will wrap up and what the report at the end of the day will say. There's also open questions as to who at the end of the day will actually see it. Politico says we ought to be prepared to be disappointed. They've interviewed defense attorneys working on the case, former government officials who have been involved in probes like this and others, and the consensus of their reporting is the report itself might never see the light of day, and even if it did, it likely will not contain the smoking guns many people are, if not hoping for, all but expecting. Joining us now to talk about this and the latest developments in the probe, good friend to the program, former federal prosecutor Roland Riopel. And Roland, let me just start with that Politico piece. And it was pretty decently sourced, the amount of folks that they spoke to, both on the defense side and former prosecutors familiar with this. You yourself, a former federal prosecutor. Do you believe that the report itself and the primary author, Mueller, if you look through his history, that there will be a bombshell in here? Do you think the public will say, that's it when it's all said and done? What's your thinking?
I think if there is a bombshell, and there may be, Richard, it will come in the next wave of charges brought by Mr. Mueller. I think that if Mr. Mueller does bring charges against someone like Roger Stone, and if there's evidence to indicate that Mr. Trump is somehow a co-conspirator with Mr. Stone, he'll be named as an unindicted co-conspirator in that indictment, the way Richard Nixon Watergate situation. So I think if there's a big bombshell, it'll be there in the charges. And as to the report, Mr. Mueller could write one sentence and say there are no further charges that are supported by the evidence, and that could be his entire report, or he could do something more detailed. My sense is that it will be more detailed, but I think any bombshells will be in the charges to come.
To that end, who gets to see it? There is, if I guarantee you, if I walked out and talked to 100 people, 99 of them would expect that the public would see at the end of the day the more than year-long probe that has been into this, whether it's the obstruction or other, that we're going to learn where, what dots got connected, etc. Is there really a chance here that, forget about the general public, even the broader Congress won't get a look at what the findings of the report are?
I don't believe that. I think that the public is going to see this report. I think Congress is going to see this report. The way the regulations and the rules work is this: Mueller makes his report, his narrative report, be it one line, be it 100 pages, he makes that to Rosenstein. Rosenstein then has the option to transmit the report to Congress. In the situation where the report and any charges that come out simultaneously indicate a good basis for a potential impeachment of Mr. Trump or some other public servant, then I think it's a certainty Rosenstein will submit the report to Congress for its consideration. If the report does not contain information that would lead to a consideration of impeachment, then I think one side or the other in Congress is going to want to subpoena the report. If the Republicans believe the report whitewashes Trump, they're going to subpoena it, and Rosenstein's going to have to give it up. If the Democrats believe the report will be damaging to Mr. Trump and they control at least the House Intelligence Committee, they'll subpoena it and it'll go to Congress. Once it goes to Congress, I think it's a certainty that anything that is not classified information will be passed to the public.
November will decide a lot of things, I think, beyond just who's going to control the House. Obviously, as you mentioned, if the Democrats take the House back, and that looks, at least by the trending more likely than not, the subpoena power. Also, if they do have that, the president's going to want to have, he's already said Jeff Sessions is not long for his job, Rod Rosenstein potentially as well. If he's going to do a bloody Saturday here, you would think he'd push out both his AG and the deputy AG. That requires confirmation, but let's say the two go. Walk out how that might work out.
Well, if the two of them are fired or they go, then the next person in line, the Solicitor General, will be the person in charge of Mueller, at least on an interim basis, until someone is confirmed for the Attorney General slot by the Senate. Noel Francisco is known to be a Trump partisan, and he likely would try to squelch as much of the Mueller probe as possible if he wanted to play partisan politics. We don't know exactly what he'll do, but the risk there is that Mueller's investigation will be choked off by the supervisor at the Department of Justice if Rosenstein and Sessions are gone. That is why it's my suspicion that we will see some significant activity from Mueller right after the election, before Trump has a chance to try to cut the snake off at the head.
I want to give you two names and tell the people the significance of them as players in this. One, Paul Manafort spending a whole lot of time with the Mueller team, and Roger Stone's name keep coming up. For both of them, what's the significance of the quality time that Manafort and the feds are spending, and also how could Roger Stone play in this whole scenario?
Okay, I see Manafort's time spent with Mueller as really, really interesting and really, really worrisome to Trump and the Trump campaign. He, of course, was right in the middle of the contact with Ms. Veselnitskaya at that June 6th, 2016 meeting. He has long and deep contacts with the Russians, so he is somebody who is very likely providing a great deal of information about the relationship between the Russians and the Trump campaign. Whether it amounts to a conspiracy to violate the law, we don't know, but Manafort certainly has those goods. And Roger Stone, who, keep in mind, Roger Stone was Paul Manafort's partner, business partner, some years back. Roger Stone appears to be the linchpin, the connector between the Trump campaign and the Russians. He admittedly was in touch with Guccifer 2.0, a Russian-sponsored agent who was, plotting to disrupt the election. And Roger Stone seems to be very much in the middle of the relationship with the Russians. So he is front and center for a likely person to be charged next.
And of course, we'll be continuing to watch. Roland, as always, it is never dull in the Trump world, and I appreciate you helping us navigate it. Absolutely. Coming up next, everybody, the political climate in this country already toxic even before the attempted bombings of some of the most prominent Democrats in this country. We come back, ABC News political director Rick Klein joins us to discuss the political ramifications of what happened today, and also the president ramping up his lies as we get closer to Election Day.